बोलिए। हेलो। शरद, can you hear me?
कॉल तो है ठीक है. Hi Salil, can you hear me?
Good afternoon, Rick McDonough.
Hello, Mr. Richard.
That sounds better.
Oh, this does? Okay. Oh, that's really good. Okay, how are you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good too. I'm good too. First of all, we would like to really thank you for agreeing for this interview because as of now, we are actually working on a project with Indiana Department of Transportation and trying to advise them on how to go about creating a roadway for connected and autonomous vehicles in the state of Indiana. And and we have why we are actually conducting these interviews are because we really strongly feel that the kind of work that has been done by states like New York, California,
Uh-huh.
can actually
Uh-huh.
give us a lot of insight into what actually is working and
Uh-huh.
how we can leverage onto that kind of information in order
Uh-huh.
to advise in more appropriately.
Mm-hmm. I
So that
agree
is
100%.
yeah, so because there are a lot of lessons which can be learned from
Yes.
the pioneers like New York and California,
Uh-huh.
because you guys have done a lot of work without any guidance. So I'm sure
Yeah.
it must have been really challenging. It must
Yeah,
have
it
been
was.
way more challenging than it is now for other states who actually would like to go on the same path. So,
Yes.
so I'm sure that there would be some things which we can learn from you, understand what you think are better, like take in your inputs
Uh-huh.
in order to decide how to go about creating the same environment and the platform in Indiana.
Uh-huh.
So
And you'll
that is
get as
that.
many
Sorry.
different opinions and perspectives as people you ask questions to.
True. Absolutely, yes, absolutely. Yeah, that is one.
So
That's
part of
another.
your challenge will be weeding through what you're being told because you'll
Yeah.
probably hear very different opinions
Mhm.
and experiences.
Okay. Okay. Okay, we will definitely keep that into account. We do understand because the fact that a lot of many professionals are working on this with various experiences in these areas, and they would come up with what they felt was the most challenging and what they think is the way to go. There could be difference in opinions. We totally understand that. And we, in fact, are looking for different views so that we
Mm-hmm.
can have a holistic idea about this.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
So we thought, since New York has been a pioneer and you have actually been on top of the one of the projects which you've worked on is the I-95 corridor,
Uh-huh.
which is a huge project,
Uh-huh.
and we feel that you can actually let us know what your experience has been in that, what your views are on connected and autonomous vehicles,
Mm-hmm.
and just the and some more information which sometimes we do not get on internet. We just don't get. I think
Sure.
sometimes the kind of information which we can get talking to individuals who have been in these projects
Yes.
can be way more valuable. So
Yes.
so we are looking for that value.
Good. Let's go.
Okay. Okay. So, so how would you like it? I just wanted to put this across. How would you like it? Like, should we ask you specific questions, or would you
Yeah,
want to?
let's just go down the questions you've got, and I'm sure
Okay,
from those questions we can have a more thorough
right.
discussion of any related issue.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that. So, so Mr. Richard, what do you think is like starting on a very general note, like what is your view on the connected and autonomous vehicle deployment? What do you think would be the future? for in
So
US?
I'm for connected and I'm against autonomous
Okay,
because
okay,
autonomous means not connected.
right, right,
And
right,
so we've got
right, right,
we've got two supplemental technologies going on here.
right, right,
One
right.
are vehicle resident systems that are out there now that
Mm-hmm.
you see on TV, the blindside warnings, emergency braking ahead, that type of stuff.
Correct.
And then you have the government program, kind of the USDOT program, that's based around real-time V2V communication and specifically 5.9 gigahertz DSRC technology.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly.
So the sensor systems do certain things well and don't do other things well.
Mm-hmm.
And connected vehicle do certain things well and doesn't do other things well. But if you put them together and fuse the technology, you improve the vehicle's capability of understanding better its situational awareness, and then it can do onboard activities like applying the brakes
Yeah.
to counteract whatever risk it's perceiving.
True. 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 Okay. So, so you
So
think,
what I would say
right,
is we
right.
want to fuse connected and automated vehicle technologies. You can't fuse connected and autonomous vehicles because autonomous means it's not connected. So the Google Mobile is an autonomous vehicle. It's not connected to anything.
Right, right,
All
right,
right, so there's really kind of three terms and
right,
categories,
right, right.
and that's the first problem in this whole arena is most people don't understand that.
True, true, true. Actually, yeah, I understand what you,
So
what you
nobody
are.
should be for autonomous vehicles
Mm-hmm.
unless that's the only thing we can get. And that's going to be depend on NHTSA's rulemaking on the 5.9 gigahertz DSRC V2V communication.
Right, right,
So that's
right,
the key.
right.
You can kind of dust away all the other issues here. That's really the key for government and for society is getting that V2V real-time communication passed because we need to force the autonomous vehicle makers like Google and Tesla to communicate with other vehicles and do a collaborative, cooperative system.
Right,
If
right,
they don't do that, if that doesn't get passed, the resident systems will still provide an improved safety capability, but it won't be as big as we could get if we fuse automated technologies with connected vehicle technologies. And connected vehicle technologies alone don't give us much unless we have automation attached to it because all of our problems are driver based. I shouldn't say all, but mostly all.
yeah,
Around
most,
95%
94%. Right, right, right.
are driver behavior based. So connected vehicle doesn't go far enough because it's only messaging the driver, and quite frankly, we don't even have that under control. There's no standards. There's not been a significant amount of research for human behavior as it applies to transportation. So the USDOT Connected Vehicle Program, to my opinion, is kind of a dead end. It doesn't really get us to where we want. And I would even argue it probably doesn't get us the benefits that USDOT says it does. I don't believe you can solve human behavior with human behavior. People just make bad decisions. People are distracted. People get sick. You need the car to step in, the system to step in when the driver isn't acting appropriately and there's a safety critical situation.
Right, right. Yeah, actually, I understand what you're saying, right? Yeah, in fact, we also at some point had this discussion where we were we were trying to understand like how would connected vehicles themselves result in huge benefits because even in that scenario, humans are taking the decisions. So, so as you said, you can't improve by replacing human behavior with human behavior because
Right.
it is the same thing.
Right. And of course, the USDOT safety analysis only includes non-impaired drivers, which is
Mm.
unrealistic perspective because as owner operators, we have to deal with all kinds of drivers. So does enforcement. There's impaired drivers for whatever reason out on the road, and it doesn't matter if you bring automation into it, then it doesn't matter whether the person's drunk or not.
True,
The
true.
system will just step in.
True,
And in
true.
fact, we can even monitor driver behavior, and within a very short time, we would be able to the system would know if the person was inebriated or not in control.
Right.
Right? You can monitor position, you can monitor driver reaction, steering wheel information, braking information, and very quickly we would be able to determine, if there was a problem with the driver, and then you can just intervene and basically stop that vehicle and warn everybody around them that there's a stopped vehicle, and then we can notify responders. And so, that's where the connected part of it comes in. But but when you're talking safety, which is the big driver here, connected vehicle is not a satisfactory solution. It's a great solution for non-safety critical usage. So any other transportation use you can think of, connected vehicle is fine because you don't need to step in and have automated systems, do anything. So for mobility, for sustainability, for system operations, connected vehicle is fine. But when we get to safety critical situations and we get into the safety arena, we want fused systems. We want real-time V2V communication. And then once we get V2V communication, now we have a required technical platform in a vehicle that we can supplement and do some of these other applications like V2I and I2V. Right? So there's kind of a secondary benefit. Yes, we need 5.9 V2V real-time communications to maximize our safety benefits, but once we do that, now we have a leg up. We have a start on doing some other applications that don't have anything to do with safety, but they could improve mobility or energy use or environment or maintaining the system.
Right. So one of the questions we actually were thinking about is how do you like if you take one of the applications which are like environment related, safe, like improving fuel consumptions. So how would connected vehicle applications help us in that? Like, would they how, what kind of communication to the driver would help to improve environment related behavior? For example, we were actually thinking about that. Would that be even possible to connected vehicles?
So there's a couple aspects to this.
Okay.
If 5.9 gigahertz DSRC devices are required in cars, and they're connected to the vehicle's data bus, now you can pull hundreds of pieces of information from the vehicle. You can pull speed information, braking information, exhaust information, on and on and on it goes. So depending on what you're trying to accomplish, some of that data can be very useful. So if you're in traffic management, knowing traffic flows, knowing that type of where queues are occurring, that's very useful. If you pulled various road weather related information, that would help us predict local weather conditions. It would help us predict road conditions. But that's probably going to happen if V2V 5.9 gets required.
Right.
Because once you put that platform in a vehicle, you could just load applications that can do a whole number of things. If you try to do these things without a standardized installation of 5.9, now you're probably going to have multiple applications, multiple systems. And so it's like you're not using one device to do everything. You're doing multiple devices to do everything.
Right. Okay. So, that's what you're saying. Okay, I understand. Like standardization of technology would be a big requirement here, which makes sense actually because otherwise vehicles wouldn't be able to talk to each other, or there might be issues which can happen. Okay.
So most of the work historically by USDOT,
Hmm.
the benefit has been in advancing and supporting various standards groups
Right.
that work around the 5.9 gigahertz technology
Hmm.
that will allow us to develop or commercialize applications that can reside on the 5.9 device. So if that device doesn't get required, if the rulemaking doesn't pass,
Right.
then all that work is for nothing. And now
nothing.
anybody can do anything. And we just won't have that standardization, which quite frankly is primarily for the public sector and the public's benefit, not for the commercial industry that's producing the car or that's producing parts for the car.
True, true,
So you got to understand the car companies are being motivated and driven by different issues.
true. Right.
And some of those issues
Right.
aren't compatible with our issues,
Right.
right? So that's one of the reasons why, just in general, we're trying to develop and require a collaborative system
Hmm.
in an industry that has never collaborated on a single thing.
Hmm.
Right? They all have their branding. They all have their designs. They all have the way you open up the gas tank. They all have their own entertainment systems.
Right.
This is not an industry that's used to working together.
Correct. Oh, that is a big
And so
challenge. Right.
Yeah, so if we pass the rulemaking, they have no choice but to
We
work
have no
together.
chance. Right.
So that's where the benefit of 5.9 comes in two areas. One, it gives you enhanced safety benefits, and it covers safety-sensitive situations that vehicle resident-only systems can. And the Tesla crash is a good example of that. If that commercial vehicle had a 5.9 and the Tesla had a 5.9, they would have known sooner that there was a potential conflict, and then those onboard cool Tesla capabilities could have kicked in. But because it's a sensor vehicle resident only, it saw the white side of the truck, and it saw it was the sky, and it didn't do anything except run into the side of the trailer at 65. And those are always going to be limitations of sensors. Sensors have a tough time determining the difference between a leaf and a concrete wall. And those problems that also include weather aren't probably going to go away.
Yeah, probably that it would take a lot more time than.
It would take a lot more time, and there's no reason to do that when you can stick a $500 device in a car and enhance everything you're doing.
Actually, that makes a lot of sense. Right.
So that's the second benefit, right? The first benefit is crash avoidance, better situational awareness when you fuse the onboard systems with the 5.9 systems. But the second is, if we can get that device mandated in vehicles, now it standardizes everything, and we can do multiple applications on one device. So it's like a one-stop shopping thing. You only have to pay once for this one device, and then you can load all these apps, and it can do a whole bunch of things versus different systems being developed by different companies that are proprietary, that, you know, you have to pay separately for each one, because everything we want to do probably can already be done by existing systems, right? There's road weather information that you can use cell phones with AVL technology, and you can upload your vehicle's position, and you can tie it into the data bus and get oil pressure. Well, we can do that with 5.9, but you don't need 5.9 to do that. Right? And so the same thing with probe information and on. There's all these other systems. But the benefit, the secondary benefit of 5.9 is it's one device does everything, and you control the cost. And nobody is talking about costs. And the other problem with vehicle resident systems is that that's exclusive only to a certain segment of society. That's a society that's people who have enough money to buy cars, that generally have to buy good cars, sometimes have to buy high-end cars to get all this safety stuff. And this shouldn't be a socioeconomic issue. Right? We should have safety devices on buses and on transit and on, for bicyclists and pedestrians. And so the only way to do that and handle that issue is to have this rulemaking pass. And once every car is required to have these devices, the price of those devices should drop dramatically.
Right.
Because instead of going for hundreds of volumes, you're going to be going to tens of millions.
Right. but wouldn't still the cost of automation, like autonomous vehicle, will always be way more higher than a regular vehicle? Like even though,
Well, it
what do
depends.
you think?
It's all about supply and demand.
Right, right.
So if you're producing one sensor, it's going to be very expensive. If you're producing a million, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And part of what's happening in the sensor world is they're coming up with better algorithms and better technologies and cheaper ways of producing sensors and nanotechnology to make them smaller. So I would say in the near term, it's a price issue.
Right.
Long term, who knows? But at the end of the process, the standalone sensor systems aren't as good as a fuse system.
Mm-hmm. Right, right.
And so when your sensor systems are good for, inanimate objects that can't broadcast or through secondary means you can't locate. So you're backing up and there's a pole that's 3 feet high and you can't see it in your rear view, side view mirrors, but you back into it and you hit it. A piece of debris in the road,
Right.
pedestrian or a bicyclist pulling in front of your car. They're really good at that.
Right, 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 right.
And of
Right.
course, 5.9 wouldn't even see those things.
Correct. Right. Right.
The
Yeah.
other thing we can do is
So a
we can put
combination
up.
would definitely be the best way to go ahead.
Fused is the best. And think about the pedestrians and bicycle situation. We can put static sensors in locations like at intersections that can give a good situational awareness, right? And then we can feed that back through the network and through I to V get to the driver. If we have sensor-only systems, that connection and communication pathway doesn't exist. So even if we knew that bicyclist was going to pull out in front of that sensor vehicle, we have no way of talking to the vehicle.
Right. Yeah. We can actually take advantage of the network when in a connected environment. Definitely.
Yes.
Okay. So like we also would actually given your expertise in this area, we wanted to actually also dig into some particular topics or projects which you have actually looked onto and managed, and we wanted to get a flavor of how did that go about. Like one of the big projects which you're heading is the I-95 Corridor Coalition, Intermodal Freight and Passenger Movement Project. So, could you tell us a little bit about that? Like what project it is and what is it trying to achieve? And
the project.
Right.
The project was funded by I-95, and it was to focus on heavy vehicles because one of the major flaws, and there are many, with the U.S. DOT's program is they've pretty much not done anything with buses and trucks. And so there's a number of problems with that, aside from being foolish, is that if you're looking at a collaborative, cooperative system with V2V communications in real time, you have to have all vehicles outfitted with that. And so to leave them out of the rulemaking is a huge problem. And they haven't done the research needed for heavy vehicles. And a lot of that's got to do with the fact that, quite frankly, the program was driven by Detroit car manufacturers, which is why a majority of the work was done in Michigan. And US DOT did not do the job we all needed to involve other state and local operating agencies to make sure we had the best output and the best decisions. So there's a lot of problems with that. But anyway, we focused on heavy vehicles.
Right.
But to just kind of quickly summarize, any state that gets involved, and we've been involved in over a decade, and other states have been involved even longer.
Right.
You need to know that this is research and applied research. It's not deploying hardened commercialized operational systems. We are many, many, many years away from that. Despite everything you're hearing.
Right.
Don't believe it. There are no commercialized, hardened, scalable systems ready for deployment. Zero. and there won't be for many, many years. And so, did we find some things out? Yes. Did we support and kind of get the issue on everybody's table? Yes. Did it end up in anything that we could deploy and use and repeat? No.
Really? Oh, that's interesting.
I would argue you couldn't find a connected vehicle project out there where they have deployed anything useful. Not that's a commercialized, hardened, scalable system. There's prototype systems primarily in Michigan, and there's a couple in California and one in Arizona and some in Virginia.
Right.
But these aren't ready for prime time. These are not commercialized systems. So in other words, if you took one vehicle from California, it probably isn't going to work anywhere else in the country.
You mean to say, for example, like, given that you're saying there's no project or there are very few projects which can be commercialized, but what about, like,
there are no commercialized systems out there. Zero. And if anybody tells you differently, they do not know what they're talking about.
Okay. So just a follow-up question this is more from me to understand what does this mean is then what I was thinking is we can have a really simple system which actually, for example, just tells you if you're actually crossing the red light warning system. So isn't that something which is commercializable and scalable?
No.
Okay.
The most advanced in traffic where do I start? There's no there's no standard requirements, there's no standard specifications, and there's no standard designs. The equipment isn't interoperable either on the vehicle side or the road side. I mean, on and on and on and on and on.
Okay. So yeah, we want to understand this because this is a big point which you have made. So
if you
really want to understand what you're saying because this has a big implication, and if what you're saying is true. Yeah.
And there's probably only about 24 people in the country who understand this. There's a lot of people involved. There are tens of thousands involved, but there's only a handful that understand what's happening. And those tend to be the state and local people who have spent the last 10 or 20 years trying to make this stuff work and have hit all these problems. One of the problems was the feds didn't coordinate a lot of their work, including their roadside hardware changes.
Right.
So,
the roadside equipment.
So, for instance, a state would go and say, okay, I want to deploy 24 radios, and then a month later, the feds would say, oh, we just changed all the specs, and now they're not compliant, and, and so I've got, in fact, if you want them, I'll give them to you. I've probably got 50 roadside units of the 3 different generations, and I just said, I'm not doing this anymore.
Right.
And by the way, there was just another change within the last 5 months. So there's an example of why these aren't commercialized. Right? And you can't standardize the basic elements, which they're not. And by the way, the roadside device is much more mature than the vehicle device.
Okay, I can see the problem now, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now on the traffic signal stuff, if you really want to know the details of that, and I'm talking about people who really know controllers and algorithms and the specifications and the message sets, I can give you names of my colleagues, because I don't really understand most of that stuff, that you could really drill down and get their opinion. But as far as I know, some of the most leading work being done is being done by the group I'm part of, which is the National Pooled Fund Study for Connected and Automated Vehicles.
Right.
Are you familiar with the Pooled Fund Study? So if you really want to know what's going on, those are the people you want to talk to. Everything else I would be suspicious of, including anybody from USDOT.
Okay, fine. we understand what you're saying. Right. Definitely. This makes a lot of
I mean, keep
sense.
in mind, USDOT didn't formally acknowledge automated vehicle technology until like 6 months ago
Right,
when they put out the
exactly.
automated
When they
vehicle
came out,
guidelines. As far as
yeah,
I
when they
know, that's
came
the
out
first.
with the document. Right.
Yeah, the guidelines. As far as I know,
Guidelines.
that's the first public announcement or communication of any type where they even acknowledged automation. So that should
Okay.
give you a sense on where they are with this.
Right.
And by the
Absolutely.
way, that was NHTSA. That wasn't FHWA or any of the other
Yeah. That
transportation
was
motor
an
agencies.
HTSA, actually. Right.
If you know what I'm saying.
Right. Okay. So, okay. Yeah, this was something I think we will definitely explore more
Yep.
because it will give us a realistic understanding of what we should actually suggest, because there's no point of just doing or saying what everybody seems to be saying. It's more important to do and think about the right things instead of just following what everybody seems to think is right.
Yeah, don't follow everybody's lead on this.
Right.
You know,
Right.
because everybody wants to be involved,
Exactly.
but
Right.
the involvement in general isn't that useful.
Mm-hmm.
So here's my suggestions. Say for the state of Indiana or any of the public agencies in Indiana,
Right.
state and local level.
Right.
I would get involved in groups like the Pooled Fund Study. That's about a $50,000 a year cost.
Right, it's 50,000.
But it's invaluable because you'll be involved directly in field deployments where we're trying to get to some commercialized, scalable, hardened system. And we're doing work on traffic signals both in Arizona and California. We're doing work here in New York on road weather information. We're pulling road weather information from our plow trucks. And that's really the best forum in terms of the experience and the capabilities of the state and local people involved. And it's the best forum for getting your hands dirty on projects. So if you were to join, for instance, you can sit on any of the project teams, you can go to all the meetings, you can go to the field demos, you can do everything, and that's invaluable, and it's well worth the cost.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
And quite frankly, almost everybody who gets into this arena is spending a lot more than that, and they're probably not getting the payback.
I cannot agree more on that. Right.
And then I guess what else I would say is if you think there's value in getting kind of involved early and learning about it, that's a reasonable position to take, except that if the 5.9 rulemaking doesn't happen, if that doesn't get approved, there's basically no role for local and state operating agencies. We have nothing to do. Because it's all going to be vehicle resident systems, it's all going to be vehicle manufacturers, and we don't have a role there. And quite frankly, from a local and state operating point of view, I don't really care if that car has a driver and a steering wheel or it doesn't. It's still on my highway. It's still impacting my bridges and my road conditions. It's still adding to congestion. It still has tailpipe emissions. It doesn't matter to me whether there's a driver there or not. So all this talk about, how do we change this and how do we change that? The answer is it doesn't. And it particularly doesn't if 5.9 doesn't get passed.
Right.
Now, it will help us in terms of any improvement will reduce the number of accidents and will reduce the congestion or reduce the emissions, but that isn't got anything to do with us. You know, that's just what we will experience. There's no cause and effect there. So again, my recommendations would be for people to get involved with discussions, get involved in groups like the Pooled Fund Study, but wait until we have an outcome of the 5.9 rulemaking. And even if you were to wait, and that's probably going to take 2 years, and let's presume it gets passed, you don't really lose anything by starting then.
Right. You don't
Because
actually.
nothing is final, nothing is commercialized,
Yeah,
nothing
you're
is an
right.
off-the-shelf solution, right? And by the way, you can even argue that you're better off waiting the 2 years
Yeah,
and
in
let
fact.
people like me and my colleagues spend all their time and frustrations trying to make all this stuff work.
Right. Okay, on a more serious note, if that is, if it, actually that makes a lot of sense. So, what would be your incentive to, do so much work? Because it's going to probably change in 6 months' time, and then another 6 months' time, and then whatever you did now, half of it doesn't make sense anymore, or it's not
Yeah.
compliant anymore.
Yeah. So
It's kind of
I think,
off topic, but we would just like
Yeah.
to know the incentive or the motivation which would drive you.
let me play devil's advocate here and take the other side of the argument.
Mm-hmm.
So there is some value in doing things, right? There's value in securing a roadside radio, knowing what it looks like, knowing how it operates, knowing how it's got to be installed. There is some value to that.
There is value to the research.
But the people need to realize that the value is more in what I would call a research or an applied research realm
rather than
it is.
employment.
Right. And I don't know about other
saying.
agencies, but our agency doesn't get involved in a lot of research. That's not what we do. We fill potholes and we, monitor traffic and
maintenance and traffic maintenance and infrastructure maintenance is definitely the most the highest priority.
So like somebody like Caltrans that has a really big department, and I think they've got a pretty big research thing. I can't get it from their point of view. You make the contacts in the industry. You start having people understanding more about communications, various types of communications. What's the standards? Who's responsible for the standards? What do they mean? What do they look like? Where do you go to find them? So there is some value in that. So I think to me, it's a trade-off. What's more valuable to any given agency? We don't have the luxury here, I would suggest, to really commit a lot of resources to those types of things because we're under-resourced for a lot of our core activities.
Right. Okay, so coming quickly back to the intermodal freight project which you're working, could you tell us really briefly what you think are the benefits of this project and what were the motivations of the? I think the motivations you did mention that the DOT did not look at heavy vehicles as much as they should have.
Correct.
But what the direction of our question was more to understand how was the integration of intermodal? Like that is unclear to us, to be honest.
It wasn't really intermodal. What it was called was the Commercial Vehicle Infrastructure Integration Program.
Okay. It's more related to freight. Okay.
Yeah. I was the chair of the intermodal committee that funded the project.
Okay.
But it wasn't an intermodal project.
Okay. So it was. So what were the what kind of learnings came out of that? Like, what kind of research did you actually carry out?
You can go online to the I-95 site, and I believe most of the documentation is there.
Right.
But so first of all, we wanted to address heavy vehicles. That was a big problem and flaw with the USDOT plan. We made it visible. We got the trucking industry involved, both in terms of the manufacturers and the associations and industry support groups. A lot of the work we were doing was V to I and I to V, so we helped push the standards forwards. Basically, even to this day, the standards for general information like in-vehicle signage and traveler information aren't complete. For some reason, they focused on a lot of traffic signal related applications that, quite frankly, don't work at this point. And so now they're trying to catch up with message sets that are more aligned
Right,
with
right.
what state and local operating agencies need, like traveler information, road weather conditions, in-vehicle signage, that type of thing. So we did in-vehicle signage, we did we did all that stuff. And the people that were involved in that project, some of those people now are involved in the committees and including chairing some of those committees. So they have that experience and they have that asset that we can promote in advance and get others involved in agreeing to those standards and specifications.
Okay. Also, one of the points which you had mentioned earlier regarding getting this industry to actually work together when they have never done that before. So, how do you see this industry versus the state DOT? How would the interaction be in terms of the technology that they are actually bringing onto cars versus the infrastructure that's available for them to work on? Like how would the interaction be? Would the infrastructure change for the technology, or will the technology adapt to the infrastructure? Like, how do you think the collaboration should go on? Like, what are your views on that?
So the only way so just to be clear, my comment was on the light vehicle manufacturers. All right, there's a distinct difference between the light vehicle manufacturers and the heavy vehicle manufacturers. Okay. One example is the heavy vehicle manufacturers have a more open system on their vehicles, so involving the data bus.
Okay.
Because a commercial vehicle is a means to an end. It's to carry freight.
Right.
So those manufacturers have to gear their vehicles towards the needs of their customers, and the needs of their customers are very finite. They're very
exact,
described,
and they're very
right?
particular, right?
Right. When you get to the light vehicle thing, people buy what the car companies tell them to buy.
Right.
Through media, through advertising. That's why you have all these huge SUV type four-wheel drive vehicles out on the road when they're really not necessary, right? Because the families, particularly a certain demographic segment of society, and particularly women, were sold that these, you need an SUV. Your neighbor's got one. You got to bring all the kids and the dogs. You got to do all this stuff, right? In the old days, you would get a station wagon, you'd get a car with four doors and a back seat, so they can do anything they want. And because of that, they have made the data bus information proprietary and not published, except for about 6 data elements. On the commercial vehicle side, that interface is more standardized because the heavy vehicle manufacturers realize that a big trucking company could buy one type of vehicle one year and another the next year. And so they could have as many different manufacturers' vehicles as there are manufacturers, right? You don't have that issue generally with a family. Right? And so the trucking companies have to have mechanics, and they have to be able to operate, to fix a Volvo and fix a Mack and fix a Peterbilt. So these companies can't afford to have all this stuff proprietary and non-standardized. That would just kick them out of the market. But the car companies can, and they protect that ferociously.
Okay, I understand. Okay. So just, we wanted to cover all bases. So we also wanted to discuss deployment, even though I know what we have been talking about until now, that probably deployment is really far away as of now. But what kind of, probably, I don't even know, probably I should ask this question, but what kind of operational issues or cost estimate issues that you might do you foresee more than anything? Do you foresee in terms of deployment for connected vehicles infrastructure?
So that's a hard question to answer because there's no commercialized systems out there. So right now, nobody knows if you had I don't know, a CODA onboard device. If you went by 3 other manufacturers' roadside device if that would even work.
Right.
So think about this. We don't even know if the core devices are interoperable.
Okay, I think probably this is really far away. It doesn't make much sense. Okay,
Yes.
okay. It doesn't
So
make
again,
much
that's
sense.
where I would suggest to people to stay on the sidelines, get involved in the forums,
Right.
learn as much as you can, but wait until things settle. And again, if that rulemaking doesn't pass, there is nothing anybody can do, even if they wanted to do it. You could have $10 billion and have the support of everybody, and there's nothing you can do because you're not going to have a role. Unless you work for a car manufacturer, you're not going to have anything to do.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, actually, my
What
question
the bigger impact, and you need to consider this in the comprehensive discussion here, is what this technology actually means in the real world and in people's decision making. So if you look at the information, the youngest generation, the millennials, have a significantly different perspective on cars and highway and transportation than my generation did. It's significant, and the statistics back it up. So, for instance, in the last 25 years, there's been about a 25 to 30% reduction in the number of driver licenses to people at age 16. That is a significant statistic.
Right.
And so what we're seeing in the Uber and Lyft issues are the examples of this.
Right.
Is the younger generation looking at transportation more as a service, more as something they pay for, not as part of their persona or that they have to own this asset. And keep in mind, somebody who didn't have that emotional attachment to the car, which again I would argue came about through the car companies advertising and the whole thing that they've done over the last 50 years. They're looking at that and saying, wait a minute, a typical car is used like 8% or less. It costs $35,000. I can pay Uber $10 a week. The numbers just don't add up.
Right.
And so when you look at it like that,
yeah, exactly.
Now you start seeing why the Ubers and the Lyfts are so
They
popular.
are actually working, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Why are they
And keep in
actually
mind,
successful?
this generation grew up with this wireless technology. This isn't new. It's not foreign to them.
It is not.
So they're comfortable using Uber and Lyft and those types of things. They're comfortable with that. In fact, they're comfortable overall. And I mean, these are trends. You ask a millennial group about privacy, they don't even know what you're talking about. So that's the important thing here, right? In addition to this huge safety benefit, which is strictly technology related, right? Whatever technology we require is going to dictate how much safety benefits we get. This behavioral change, this perception change is different, right? It's related, but it's separate.
Right, it's separate.
The technology is supporting and encouraging and allowing and driving this change in behavior and perception.
Right.
And that's going to happen regardless of whether 5.9 goes through or not. So what I'm doing is making somewhat of a distinction between the CAV technology and how that does or does not get deployed. But then related but separate is technology with the younger generation changing their perceptions, which then is driving monumental change in transportation as reflected by Uber and Lyft. So if we have our fleet go from 8% utilization to 90%, that drives all kinds of changes, land use changes, planning. You don't have to have massive parking lots anymore, right? And then you have those sustainability issues, right? You're getting, in theory, particularly if it's hybrid or electric, you're getting lower emissions, you're getting better energy usage, et cetera, et cetera.
True. Okay, Mr. Richard. Actually, this conversation has been really valuable for us because you have given like couple of points which are definitely something would in fact is probably going to direct our understanding in a very different manner. So
Okay.
thank you so much for this.
Anytime.
And if possible, like if you would be okay with any follow-up questions, we would be really
Absolutely.
happy to talk to you regarding this.
Absolutely.
And we will
Anytime.
that'll be great. Thank you so much, Mr. Richard. And we will definitely update you on our research if you would like to know more about it later on. Like when we actually do have a synthesis up, we would definitely love to share it with you.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. You're welcome. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.